Somewhere in the Strait of Malacca, in the late 1940s, a Morse code transmission cut through the static on international maritime frequencies. Multiple ships picked it up. Dutch listening posts recorded it. American vessels in the area triangulated the signal. The message was short. It was sent blind, without preamble, without identification at first. Just a voice in dots and dashes, calling out from a ship that was already dying. SOS from Ourang Medan. We float. All officers including captain dead, lying in chart room and on bridge. Probably whole crew dead. A few garbled transmissions followed, incoherent, breaking up, as if the operator was struggling to keep his hand on the key. Then two final words came through clearly, followed by silence. I die. Nothing more was ever heard from the SS Ourang Medan. And what happened next, when rescuers reached the ship and climbed aboard, became one of the most disturbing maritime stories of the 20th century. Not because of what they found, but because decades later, historians began to suspect that the ship, the crew, and the entire nightmare may never have existed at all. The most widely circulated version of the story places the events in February of 1948, though some accounts say 1947, and the earliest reports trace back to 1940. The location is the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest maritime corridors in the world, a narrow passage of water between the Malay Peninsula and the Indonesian island of Sumatra, connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. Hundreds of ships pass through these waters every week. It was not the kind of place where a vessel could disappear unnoticed. And yet, that is exactly what happened. The American merchant vessel Silver Star was among the ships that intercepted the distress call. Her captain altered course and headed toward the coordinates that radio triangulation had identified. When the Silver Star reached the position, the crew spotted the Ourang Medan on the horizon. She was drifting. No engine noise, no lights, no smoke from the stacks, no crew visible on deck, not even a lookout. The ship floated in silence, riding low in the water, moving with the current, like something that had already given up. The Silver Star hailed the Ourang Medan by radio. No response. They signaled with lights. Nothing. They sounded their horn across the water. The only sound that came back was the slap of waves against Ourang Medan's hull. The captain of the Silver Star ordered a boarding party. The men rowed across and climbed the ladder onto the deck of the Dutch freighter. What they found has been described in dozens of accounts, and while the details vary with each telling, the core of the scene is always the same. The crew of the Ourang Medan was dead. Every single one of them. Their bodies were scattered across the deck, the bridge, the chart room, the engine room, and the passageways below. They lay on their backs. Their eyes were open. Their faces were frozen in expressions of absolute terror, mouths twisted, teeth bared, as if every man aboard had seen something so horrifying in his final moments that the shock of it killed him where he stood. The captain was found on the bridge, exactly where the distress call had said he would be. The officers lay in the chart room. In the radio room, the operator was slumped over his telegraph set, his finger still resting on the key. He had died mid-transmission, sending his last message to a world that could not help him. There were no wounds on any of the bodies, no blood, no signs of violence, no evidence of a struggle. Whatever had killed these men had not touched them physically. It had simply stopped them, all at once, in the middle of whatever they were doing. Meals sat half-finished in the mess. Tools hung in their racks. Navigation charts lay spread across the table. Life aboard the ship had been interrupted in a single instant, as though someone had reached in and switched it off. Even the ship's dog was dead. It lay on its back with its lips curled in a snarl, frozen in the same posture of terror as the men it had lived among. Some accounts describe an additional detail that makes the scene even more unsettling. Despite the tropical heat of the Strait of Malacca, where temperatures routinely exceed 90 degrees, the interior of the Ourang Medan was unnaturally cold. The boarding party reportedly felt a chill below deck that had no explanation, a drop in temperature that did not match the climate, the location, or any mechanical cause they could identify. The Silver Star's captain made a decision. He would tow the Ourang Medan to the nearest port, where authorities could conduct a proper investigation. Lines were secured between the two ships. The TOW began, and then the Ourang Medan caught fire. Smoke began pouring from the No. 4 cargo hold. Within minutes, the fire was out of control, spreading faster than anything the boarding party had seen. The Silver Star's crew cut the tow lines and pulled away. Moments later, the Ourang Medan exploded. The blast was massive, violent enough to lift the ship partially out of the water before she broke apart and sank. The sea closed over her. The fire went out, and every piece of evidence that might have explained what killed the crew went to the bottom with the ship. No wreckage was recovered. No bodies were pulled from the water. No salvage operation was ever conducted. The Ourang Medan was gone, and she had taken her secrets with her, as thoroughly as if she had planned it. The theories began immediately. The most commonly cited explanation involves the cargo. Multiple versions of the story suggest the Ourang Medan was carrying something she was not supposed to be carrying. The post-war years in Southeast Asia were chaotic. The region was transitioning from Japanese occupation to the reassertion of European colonial control. The Dutch were fighting to maintain their grip on Indonesia. Vast quantities of military material, including chemical weapons stockpiled by the Japanese during the war, were being moved through unofficial channels. Some researchers believe the Ourang Medan was transporting a secret and illegal cargo of hazardous chemicals, such as nerve agents, potassium cyanide, or nitroglycerin, hidden in her hold and undeclared on any cargo manifest. If seawater entered the hold, it could have reacted with these chemicals to produce toxic gas. The fumes would have risen through the ship silently, killing the crew in minutes. The expressions of terror on the dead men's faces would be consistent with the effects of certain nerve agents, which can cause convulsions, paralysis, and death, while leaving no external marks. The unnaturally cold temperature reported below deck could have been caused by an endothermic chemical reaction, a process that absorbs heat from the surrounding environment. The explosion that destroyed the ship could have been caused by nitroglycerin, or another unstable compound igniting as the chemical reaction progressed. This theory is elegant. It explains the deaths, the fire, and the explosion. It explains why no official record of the cargo exists, and it explains why no government ever launched a formal investigation. If the Ourang Medan was smuggling chemical weapons through international shipping lanes, every party involved, the shippers, the buyers, and the colonial authorities who allowed it, would have had every reason to ensure the story disappeared along with the ship. A second theory, less dramatic but equally plausible, points to carbon monoxide poisoning. A malfunction in the ship's boiler system could have produced carbon monoxide that accumulated in the enclosed spaces below deck. Carbon monoxide is odorless and colorless. The crew would not have known they were being poisoned until it was too late. The gas causes confusion, headache, and loss of consciousness before death. In a confined space with poor ventilation, it could have killed the entire crew within hours. The problem with this theory is that carbon monoxide poisoning typically causes a gradual loss of consciousness, not the sudden violent death suggested by the contorted faces and outstretched arms described by the boarding party. Carbon monoxide victims usually look peaceful, as though they fell asleep. The crew of the Ourang Medan looked like they died in agony. A third theory suggests piracy. The Strait of Malacca has been plagued by pirates for centuries, and the late 1940s were no exception. But piracy does not explain the lack of injuries on the bodies. Pirates kill with blades and bullets, they leave marks, and they steal. The Ourang Medan's cargo, whatever it was, appeared undisturbed. And then there is the fourth theory, the one that makes this story unlike any other ghost ship mystery in history. The SS Ourang Medan may never have existed. No ship by that name appears in Lloyd's shipping register, the most comprehensive record of merchant vessels in the world. No registration documents have ever been found in the Netherlands, Indonesia, or any other country. No crew manifest exists, no builder's records, no insurance claims, no photographs, no dock records from any port showing the Ourang Medan arriving or departing. The Silver Star existed, and her movements in the region can be partially traced, but no official account from her crew describing the events has ever been located in any naval or merchant marine archive. The earliest known report of the story appeared in 1940 in Italian and British newspapers, placing the ship near the Solomon Islands rather than the Strait of Malacca. In 1948, a Dutch-Indonesian newspaper called De Locomotief published a three-part series that introduced most of the details we now associate with the legend, including the specific SOS wording and the exploding ship. The source for the series was a journalist based in Trieste named Silvio Scherli, who may also have been connected to the original 1940 reports. A 1952 article in the Proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council, a publication of the United States Coast Guard, repeated the story and lent it an air of official credibility. But maritime historian Michael East, who has researched the Ourang Medan extensively, concluded that the Coast Guard article was a retelling of existing rumors rather than an independent report based on verified evidence. The dates shift, depending on who tells the story: 1940, 1947, 1948. The location changes: the Strait of Malacca, the Solomon Islands, the Marshall Islands. The details mutate with every retelling. A survivor appears in some versions, a man called Jerry Rabbit who washes up on the Marshall Islands in a lifeboat and tells a missionary the whole story on his deathbed. In other versions, there are no survivors at all. The only consistent elements across every version are the distress call, the dead crew with terrified faces, and the ship exploding before anyone can investigate. This is either the most elaborate maritime cover-up of the 20th century, or it is one of the most convincing ghost stories ever invented. A story so well constructed that it was published in an official United States Coast Guard journal, repeated in newspapers across 3 continents, and investigated by researchers for over 80 years, all for a ship that cannot be proven to have been real. The writer Michael East believes that something happened, probably during the Second World War, not after it. A ship likely sank under mysterious circumstances, but it was probably never called Ourang Medan, and the journalist Silvio Scherli took whatever fragments of the real event existed and filled in the gaps with details that made a good story into an unforgettable one. The dead crew with frozen faces, the dog snarling in death, the 2 words, "I die." These are the details of a writer, not an investigator. They are too precise, too cinematic, too perfectly horrifying to be the product of a garbled radio transmission and a brief boarding in rough seas. But that is what makes the Ourang Medan so difficult to dismiss, because the alternative explanations are almost as disturbing as the ghost story. If the ship was smuggling chemical weapons, then men died transporting cargo that their own governments denied existed, and the cover-up was so thorough that the ship itself was erased from every official record. If the ship never existed at all, then someone invented a story detailed enough and credible enough to fool journalists, maritime historians, and the United States Coast Guard for the better part of a century. And they did it at a time when post-war Southeast Asia was full of real ships carrying real illegal cargo through real unmonitored shipping lanes, where real people disappeared without anyone asking questions. The Strait of Malacca is still one of the busiest waterways in the world. More than 90,000 vessels pass through it every year. The water is warm and shallow in places, deep and dark in others. Hundreds of wrecks lie on the bottom, most of them identified, some of them not. If the Ourang Medan is real, she is down there somewhere, her hull broken open by the explosion that destroyed her, her cargo scattered across the seabed, her crew still lying where they fell in 1947 or 1948, or whenever it was that the world lost track of a ship no one can prove ever sailed. And if she is not real, if the whole thing was invented by a journalist in Trieste who wanted to sell a story, then the Ourang Medan is something almost as frightening. A ghost ship that was never a ship at all. A legend so perfectly constructed that it haunts the ocean without ever having touched the water. A story about death at sea that may be the most convincing fiction the maritime world has ever produced. Either way, the last words from the Ourang Medan were the same. 2 words, tapped out in Morse code by a man who was either dying or never existed, transmitted across the water to anyone who would listen. I die. Then silence. And the silence has lasted 80 years. If you want to hear the stories of what else the sea has taken and never returned, subscribe. There is always another ship that never came home.